I remember being young and stupid. And you know what? I have no resentment towards myself for being stupid back in those days of being stupid. The dorky things I did as a teenager, the mullet I had, all the hairstyles, the rat tail, the horrible clothes, none of that even matters because those are things that I've carried on into my adult life. I've still got long hair, I still wear absurd clothes, still have weird styles. Sometimes when people, I think, look back on their childhood, they think, oh God, how was I such a dork and how did I not know the things that I know today? Which I can understand. But I don't think being a dork or a nerd is something that's really frowned upon in the current world. I was not a nerd by any means, but I hung out with nerds. Dorks were a totally different thing. It's you know, just kind of people who, when you're young, as a teenager, I think a lot of the time we don't really think through what it means to be an adult or a kid. You're too young to really grasp any of the concepts of, this is what, I guess, not right and wrong necessarily, but so many people my age look back, and I'm 46, they say, oh God, if I'd only known in high school what I know now. I'm like, you couldn't know in high school what you know now. Because in order for you to know those things, you would have to have experienced them. You don't know something until you've actually lived it. And that's why life experience, life wisdom is so much more rewarding and valuable than, let's just say, having knowledge that you read something or read a book. For example, when I was younger, I had this idea that I knew more than the average person. I look back, I started writing poetry in, like early in high school. And I believe it was because my dad wrote poetry and he'd passed away when I was a freshman. So I wanted to kind of continue that. And I remember even in my senior or junior year, I had this English teacher that told me that my poems weren't structured properly. And even at that age, I was smart enough to be like, fuck you, it's a poem. I don't give a shit what you think about it. You still have to fucking grade me properly on it because it's a poem to me. It could be a limerick, it could be anything. Um, these people turned on their car and they have their like headlights blaring right in my face, and they've got to totally know they're doing that. Anyway, now the other car turned on their headlights. I'm a complainer sometimes about stupidity, and this is something I guess would be perfect to bring into the discussion here. Um, I thought that I was smarter than the average person when I was younger, as I said. I wrote poetry that described how hard it was to live in a world of idiots. And it's just so funny being bombarded by two sets of headlights with people in front of me right now that I know are looking at me and can see that I'm like sitting right in front of them. Now they're finally pulling out. Um, People are fucking dumb. People are oblivious, ignorant, and really inconsiderate about the world around them and other people. And this is something that I've tried to comprehend and navigate my whole life. There's morons on every corner. Every time I drive to work, I want to make a video about how stupid everybody else is. Not make a video, but just, complain, maybe make a YouTube video about it. And I never have, because complaining about how dumb other people are, it serves absolutely no purpose. It's as I'm sitting here, I'm watching, as I drop my kid off her karate, all the other kids that are leaving their class, all the soccer moms are now pulling out in their SUVs. And they're just like, it's like this choreographed dance of SUV parking. And it's just so funny. They're just like driving at 2 miles an hour trying to figure out where the hell to go. Where should I park? You know, it reminds me of a movie I saw a while back where it was like some symphony, music playing to everybody leaving at the same time in the morning and coming back in the morning or in the afternoon. Everybody pulling into their yards going, oh, hey neighbor, this kind of modern happy human kind of bullshit, that it's absurd. I'm not that neighbor. I'm not that guy. And I guess I'm very outspoken about things that bother me. I don't feel like it's playing a victim or being a complainer to point out the inconsistencies in humanity, meaning that there are several different levels of existence, none above or below another. Don't get me wrong. This is something I've had a hard time explaining in the past. It's not that there are people who are lower than others, because there are people who are living a very primal lifestyle. Let's say somebody who lives out in the woods by themselves. The most primal example of an isolated, human being, completely away from other people. Maybe they're low, maybe they have no education. It doesn't mean that they're less intelligent, and it doesn't mean that they're less capable. This is actually a discussion that came up the other day. I was talking with someone, I think it might have been my brother. We were talking about intelligence and something about voting and IQ tests. And I was pointing out how the IQ test is pretty bogus, in my opinion. That you could point out people with an extremely high IQ that have done stupid things. I think of Oppenheimer. If you're not familiar, Oppenheimer he's credited for creating the nuclear bomb. And after World War II, when we dropped those two bombs on, Hiroshima and Nagasaki back in 1945, he was quoted as saying, "I am become death, destroyer of worlds." Now, yes, that is properly spoken. I am become death. That's just how the phrase goes. And it's, I believe, an old Hindu text, but I think it was Shiva, the Lord of Destruction, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. But it had to do with the fact that a very intelligent person who had created a crazy form of energy, not created, but discovered a way to make amazing nuclear energy, first had helped in turning it into a fucking weapon. Long before humanity could benefit from this new discovery and actually gain some value as a species, we scared people away from nuclear power because we wanted to blow some shit up. And I think about so many different highly intelligent people working in laboratories, working on various research that probably escaped the lab recently. And I can't get into that because then I'll get censored on YouTube. But lo and behold, very smart people do very stupid things. And I guess the point is that a highly intelligent person can make drastic mistakes for the entire species. Whereas a, quote, less intelligent person cannot destroy the species and likely has no desire to. There's a lot of hubris involved in inventions and creation that we think we're doing the right thing. But back to that guy that's living in the woods. That guy with maybe a 5th, 6th grade education who went off to live by himself. He's intelligent. Highly intelligent. But only in a different way than you think. Different way than you realize. And this is what I wish I'd known when I was younger. If there's anything that I wish I could have known when I was younger, I don't expect myself to be able to see through all the bullshit in the future. I know that wisdom brings experience, therefore experience brings knowledge. You can't just learn the knowledge and say, oh, now I know this is true. It doesn't work. You have to experience these things. Therefore, I've heard somebody quoted as saying that there are like something like a dozen different forms of intelligence. I have to plug my phone in now because my phone isn't intelligent enough to charge itself. There we go. So there are something like a dozen forms of intelligence, everything from what you would consider an IQ, which is the quotient, the intelligence quotient test. It doesn't mean anything, really, except for that you can solve certain puzzles and problems that may pertain to the current society that we live in, dealing with being able to recognize certain shapes or numbers or patterns. But if to go back to the guy who lives in the woods, he has a natural intelligence. If you were to take the smartest genius scientist and you send him out in the woods with that guy, and that guy would have to teach them what to listen for, what to look for. You see those clouds up in the sky? Yeah. Well, those clouds say that this is going to happen in the weather tomorrow. You see that this side of the tree is more burned off than the other one? Yeah, so that's because of the winds that are coming from this direction. And this is how you follow the sun. This is how you know what day it is, what time it is. This is how we keep track of our food. This is how we protect our food. Things that a highly intelligent scientist in the modern day would have no clue how to do. And I know a person may say, that doesn't matter because we live in a modern society and nobody needs to know that shit. But you might. You might tomorrow. If the power went out everywhere, like this is something that I'm just throwing out as not just a what if, but a when type thing. I'm very familiar with the Carrington event and the solar, weather that we have, where every 150 years or so there's a major solar flare that could take the grid out, which did in 1859 with the, telegraph lines catching on fire. And this is a whole other story, but let's just say tomorrow there was a major CME, or coronal mass ejection, or solar flare, call it what you wish, that erupted Earth-facing, some very high X class or way off the chart, to the point where it induced such intense ground currents that all the power went out. And we were set back decades, if not centuries, because without light, without power, we can't do anything. And there's a point to this. It relates to the video. We're talking about intelligence. I believe that an intelligent person must have all the different forms of intelligence. I still believe that the number one and most important form of intelligence is emotional intelligence. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. No matter how smart you are, no matter how good of a hiker or outdoorsman you are, no matter how intelligent you are about various topics, knowing how to deal with people is probably the most important. And that's because, obviously, if people anger you all the time, or you're stressed out, or you have anxiety about being around others, or you can't deal with customers or clients, then you're not very intelligent in the way of remaining happy. So it's like when to back up, when I was talking with my brother and talking about the IQ test, I said, I believe the highest form of intelligence is natural intelligence and emotional intelligence. But that's because it helps you lead a stress-free life, which the less stress you suffer, the happier you are. It's not just that you live longer, but being happy, actually, in my opinion, it's kind of a tricky one, because being intelligent doesn't necessarily mean that you learn to be happy. It means you learn to let go of the bullshit. It means you learn to not argue when it's not worth it, to not fight back against causes that you can't do anything about, or systems or people, to learn to tell people how you really feel, be honest with it, and step up to the plate and say, this is my feeling about this situation, these are my emotions about this, if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. And setting boundaries, and that is priceless. So having several different forms of intelligence, I think, is a totally legitimate claim. Who says what intelligence is? Who says what being smart is? To be honest, as I got older, I started believing I was less and less intelligent. And I think this is pretty universal with a lot of folks who, I guess a lot of folks who do a lot of deep thinking, because I'm also intelligent enough to know that I'm not that intelligent. That means I'm intelligent enough to know that just because I'm thinking doesn't mean what I'm thinking about is important or valid to anyone else but me. I'm trying to be the best person I can. I'm trying to be as kind as I can to folks, to be as tolerant as I can to the idiot soccer moms, as I was saying earlier. Like, there's a lot of weird shit going on in the world. It's easy to get wrapped up in it. I think people, whether it's picking sides or picking friends or picking your noses, we all struggle. And if you can acknowledge your struggle and share that with other people, and you're able, even if not just, I'm not talking about making YouTube videos or writing anything down, but just having someone in your life that you can sit down with, if nothing else, and just empty your thoughts. I don't have that. I don't want to burden other people with my bullshit because my brain is like a million miles an hour every day. I'm always thinking about shit. Philosophy is like my consistent life. Like all day at work, I'm out there thinking about, you know, different ideas about life. It's become a program, a constantly running program. And there was a time where I thought that philosophy and understanding life was a type of intelligence or wisdom could be used in a way that, you know, would benefit me. But I've come to a really harsh reality in my life over the past decade or so. That intelligence is a burden more than anything. That awareness or awakeness is a burden most of the time. And this can be summed up in 3 words that you've heard a million times. Ignorance is bliss. I think when people really understand that concept, it took me a while. I've heard that term for my whole life. Ignorance is bliss. I never really processed it until recently. And actually, I'm kind of doing it right now, even a little deeper, trying to understand that the idea that it's not, the term ignorance needs to be defined first. Ignorance, by definition, is to ignore the facts. It's like skirting the details, skirting the facts, ignoring them. Literally, ignorance is ignoring the facts. So, what does that really mean? It doesn't mean you're dumb. It has nothing to do with necessarily intelligence. It has a lot to do with if you're intelligent enough to know what to ignore. Therefore, if you are aware and conscious of the world around you and you are able to say, oh, look what's going on here. Oh, somebody said, look what's going on with the presidential race, or look at what's going on here in politics, or with this person or that person, or some guy that runs the WHO and everybody's mad about this or him or her, whatever it might be. I just don't look. And then I have to have, you know, that discussion with people when they say, well, if you're not aware of what's going on, then, you know, yada yada, you shouldn't vote, or you shouldn't, you know, then how can you be part of society and how can you contribute? I say, maybe I don't want to be aware of trivial politics between the left and right wing. Maybe I don't want to be interested in what one person said from an agency that really has no bearing on my life, and even if they do, there's nothing I can do about it. And this brings me to an important concept I want to share. Something I learned years ago that I've probably shared this at least a dozen times. Whenever something bothers you or concerns you or stresses you out, step back and close your eyes and ask yourself one question. Is this situation in my circle of influence or just my circle of concern? And they're mutually exclusive. Sometimes they can, I guess, intertwine, but Basically, it means this. Whenever some issue comes up, let's say you have a flat tire. Okay, that's in your circle of influence. That's something you can do. And you know if you don't fix your tire, then you're not going to get to work. It's like 2 nights ago. My alternator was being weird. I got home from work. I was exhausted. And what did I do? I had to go out frickin' in the dark and buy an alternator, bring it home, try to put it in with the wrong tools, because I'm not a mechanic. I'm a carpenter, damn it. You asked me to build a box. I got all the tools for that. But it comes to cars. It was like, oh, God. So I tested it. I found out it was overcharging, and I got a new one, put it in, and it took me a lot longer than it should have. But that was within my circle of influence. It was something that I had to do, and something that I could do because I've done it before. I could have paid somebody a few $100 to do it for me. It's like, no, I'm going to do it myself because it's within my circle of influence. The circle of concern are things like, oh, hey, did you hear about what this president is doing? Or guess what this politician did? Or, oh, did you hear about... I can't even think of her name right now. There's all these new politicians that are supposedly, these young, different races or different gender, different sexual preferences. And it becomes this whole bullshit, surface crap about, well, I'm voting for this guy or that guy because they stand for this or they stand for that. When in reality, it's all just a game. It's a game to keep people distracted. And if you put your energy into that shit, then you're going to be depressed. You're going to be depressed. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be stressed out because of all the chaos. See, I just got distracted and interrupted by another soccer mom in a Subaru pulling up here with her headlights like right in my face. And she's in the parking spot, but she hasn't turned them off. Is that in my circle of concern or my circle of influence? I don't know. Maybe I'll just stare at her. Maybe she'll turn it off eventually. But that's the thing. To back up to what I was saying earlier, I never really finished that discussion about how just ignorant people are, how unaware people are of what's going on around them. I posted something the other day about the fast lane. It's like, don't go slow in the fast lane. And I know what she's going to do. She's going to leave her headlights on. Oh, she's got her whole soccer bag with her. She's going to leave her headlights on because, oh, they turn off on their own. It's automatic. Why does that bother me? I don't know. Maybe I just grew up in a time where you turn your headlights off. It's so funny because as I'm sitting here, I'm talking about certain things and that, the wisdom and the gained wisdom, but still annoyed by these little things. And I think that's really universal. I think that everyone out there is annoyed by something. Whether it be a toll bridge in your town, or your neighbor's tree that drops leaves, or somebody who parks wrong on the street, or the business down the street that doesn't seem to, treat the customers right. Everybody has complaints. And something I've really come to terms with over the last, I'm going to say 5 years. Because I've been doing YouTube for, 12 years now. And I was pretty fucking ignorant for the first half of it. And the funny thing is, the more that I've gained and learned about, and insights about talking with people, discussions, topics, the more I've been able to look back at myself and say, God, why did I talk about that? Like, I've been getting these little emails from YouTube lately saying, oh, we've age restricted your content. So I'm like, oh, what is it? And I would go back and I look, and it's an old video of smoking joints or something, like talking about 420. And it just seems so tacky. But at the time, it felt like I was doing the right thing, like saying, cannabis is something that people find important and should be able to share these things. And so what I found to be maybe bold or important back then, today just seems kind of cheesy. And it's just weird looking at ourselves. I'm in a position where I can look back on my life for the last 12 years and what I was thinking any day on YouTube. That's pretty crazy. I don't do it, but one day I'll probably go back and watch some old videos. And I don't even watch videos before I post them. But I'll definitely go back and watch some of these old videos and go, oh my God, that is so cringe. But I leave them up because that's where I was at that time. I have writings from 30 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, I actually wrote that. Something about being smarter than everyone and how it's a burden to deal with all the ignorance. I even posted a song with those lyrics in it, and it's just funny. Understanding that we need to have a little humility, but also a little bit of self-awareness and a little bit of arrogance, or at least being able to be a badass once in a while, or at least acknowledge when we're doing things right. Give ourselves credit when credit is due. And yeah, anyway, this turned into a lot longer video than I thought it was going to be. Thanks for listening. I'd love to hear your comments and, whatever your opinions are on this topic. I realize I wandered a little bit, but in essence, it's being able to look back on my life, being able to look back on my ignorance, and being able to question what intelligence really is, and realizing that as awkward as I am, as a 6'3" lanky, kind of hunched, hippie dude, I can put myself down for my behaviors or how I look or how I feel or whatever it might be. But most of the time I'm able to step back and just laugh at it all. Say, life's too short to stress about all these little things. So don't let other people's stresses be your stresses. Don't worry about ignorance. Ignoring certain things can be okay. You don't have to be completely on top of your game all the time. It's okay to wear pajamas in the grocery store, and it's okay to be honest with your emotions. In fact, if you've dug yourself in so deep that you're afraid to share yourself, afraid to share your emotions or ideas with anyone in your life, and you're afraid to express how you want to dress and how you want to wear your hair, whatever it might be, it's never too late. You can decide today, right now, to say, tomorrow, I'm going to dress, act, and behave the way that I feel is me. And you'll find that you might get some resistance for a short period of time. Believe me, I've encountered plenty of resistance with my I'm super stubborn about things. I like to do things my way. I'm not a control freak. There's a big difference. I'm stubborn as hell. Like even at work, my boss trying to show me how he does stuff. I'm like, no, this is how I do it. And, I do it my way and it works. It's fine. It's nothing personal to his way. But I've been doing certain things long enough to say this is how I do it. And once you build that confidence, that ability to say this is how I do things, and if the world doesn't like it, then fuck off, you'll be set. I mean, people will respect you for that. They will. Your friends, your family, and those who don't respect you when you set boundaries and you're honest with them, they're probably not worth spending time with. It's unfortunate, but a lot of people's relationships are based on very surface bullshit. If you can't get down and deep and really talk about being a human with somebody, then it's, utterly pointless to pursue that as a deep discussion. But you got to feel that out, and you'll find that you will maybe repel people who are shallow or aren't interested in who you really are, but you will attract people who love authenticity, and authenticity is the key word in this video. Being authentic to yourself and to others. So those are my thoughts. Peace out. And I'll talk to y'all next time. Be well.